I don't want you ever more looking down on me. You are too late just to see what you came to see. I have blossomed to be higher than the tallest tree. I have lightened, floating higher than the air around me.
I've been a musician all my life, pretty much. My parents were classical singers, so they taught my sister and I to sing from a really tiny age. And so I grew up singing in classical choirs and had a lot of voice training for opera and that kind of stuff. I guess when I was about 15 or so, I found my dad's old classical guitar in the closet. And I immediately fell in love with it, started teaching myself how to play. Then I started sort of seeking out other female musicians to try and, get some role models. And there wasn't a lot at that time. I mean, it was the 80s, so I think my favorite female artist at that time was Pat Benatar. And of course there was Madonna, but she was Madonna, and yes, she's awesome, but it wasn't really applicable to what I was trying to accomplish with the acoustic guitar, and really what I wanted to do was just learn how to become a songwriter and a guitar player. I started discovering a lot of the great acts of the 70s, like Simon and Garfunkel and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and got really inspired a lot by that music. And fell really in love with Janis Joplin. So that was probably my first really strong female influence in terms of vocals, and it gave me a lot of inspiration as far as like how I could push my vocals beyond my classical training. I started listening to WYP and discovered like Suzanne Vega, and she was a really huge inspiration to me because she was doing sort of the acoustic guitar songwriting stuff that I was doing.
Oh, the pretty things all around and inside of me.
Rusted Root was kind of a magical thing to have happen. I mean, it's pretty rare, I think, that a group of individuals can come together and have such energy together and such excitement in the music. A couple of my songs actually were Rusted Root songs. One song called Moon that we played in Rusted Root way in the early days did end up on one of our albums. It was, I think, the 4th album. It was a self-titled album, so it's just called Rusted Root. And then a couple albums later, another song of mine called Too Much was also a Rusted Root song. So those are my 2 token Rusted Root songs. And, that whole thing was sort of a process to really accept that, Rusted Root is a certain thing for me. It's, I think the most valuable advice that I ever got was from one of our producers of one of our Rusted Root albums. Her name was Susan Rogers, and she worked a lot with Prince. She did the whole Purple Rain thing with Prince. She was awesome. I remember one time when we were recording, it was actually when we were recording the album that Moon was on, and there was a lot of struggle at that time about, who was going to have what kind of input into the songs and into the development of the album. And Susan stopped us in the middle, mid-argument and said, this is not the only music you will ever create. This is not your only chance. And when she said that, it was like this huge weight lifted off of me. And I had really was kind of stuck in the fact that, I'm in this successful band. This is like where all my eggs have to be, and if my songs can't be in the forefront, then then this is a bad situation for me, And that, I think, was kind of a trap, and I really had to learn that Rusted Root was what it was, and it was successful as what it was, and that if I wanted to have my own music, I could have that. I just had to actually do it and not sit around stressing about the fact that my music isn't part of Rusted Root. Once I really got a grip on that and really started focusing on my own material, I spent about 5 years recording my first solo studio album, which is called Autobiographical. and released that, and I sold it on Rusted Root Tour, and lots of people bought it and loved it, and I've still to this day I'm playing a lot of solo shows, which is really fulfilling. You know, I feel like I've found a balance.
Thank you so much.
So my latest musical endeavor is called Drowning Clowns, and that is a new band with myself, my husband, Mike Speranzo, my nephew, Evan Smith, our good friend, Frank Spatafora, who's been playing in bands with Mike forever, since college, and lots of other of our friends here in Pittsburgh. And Drowning Clowns is a lot more collaborative, a lot more inclusive of everybody in terms of the creative process. And I really, really love the music, and it's also a really great balance to everything else that I have going on with solo music and Rusted Root. Yeah, I mean, it's true there's not as many women in music as men. I don't know if that's because there's not as many women, period, doing it, or if it's because men get more opportunities. I'm not sure. It's definitely a thing. There definitely are more males in music, and if you look at any music festival lineup, there are definitely more male-fronted bands, and the female-fronted bands kind of get like spreckled in with the male within a good balance, you know? You'll never see a lineup that's like 5 female-fronted bands in a row, as opposed to you will see that with male. I mean, I'm not like a big feminist who's gonna say, yeah, it's all sexist, you know, because I'm a really big believer in just getting your own house in order and being your own best advocate and working your ass off for what it is that you want to do. Whether you're a man or a woman or trans or whatever, just if you want to do something, do it. If you want to be somebody, make yourself into the person who you want to be, you know? And, you know, what I do think, though, is that I do think that that's harder for women than it is for men. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know what makes it harder, but I know that as a woman, I found it a lot harder. Remember as a young, 18-year-old, wishing that somebody would sit down with me and teach me how to use a 4-track tape recorder and how to write and produce songs, and there was nobody in my world that knew that stuff, that could teach me that. And people like Michael Glebicki from Rusted Root, he knew all that stuff and he was making his own demos, and so I don't know why he knew that and I didn't. I just maybe didn't have the same opportunity, or maybe I didn't have the same kind of focus that he did. I mean, there definitely isn't as much representation in the music industry for women, but I don't think that that's something to sit and kind of feel bad about or whine about. I think it's really just a matter of whoever you are, male or female, if you want to do something, then do it. Motivate yourself, find out what steps are necessary, and put yourself where you want to be.
I call this song my personal declaration of independence. It's called Ask. that life is moving through me way too fast. I can't believe it, me. All I had to do was ask, and now my life has shifted. And now my life has changed in way too many ways to leave me wanting to go the other way. All my life I've asked, and on we pray. So pick up your pieces, though you're